My darling philosophers, welcome to our daily devotional reading. I really do hope that you are well. Let's start immediately with turning inward, quieting our minds, quieting our hearts. Some days that's more difficult than others. And maybe some days we're not supposed to quiet our hearts. Maybe some days our hearts are supposed to be jubilant and rejoicing and beating away like a drum. Congratulations on the 2 million. I'm really proud of you. I know I probably don't have the right to feel proud of you, except, of course, for the fact that we are one. But besides that, you carry it well. You carry it very well. I even feel grateful to you for that as well. "200 days to go here at the Make-Believe Monastery. Also want to thank all the members of our Make-Believe Monastery for bearing it out and for traveling with me on this journey with no destination. A journey of discovery and sometimes a bit of a confusing journey as well. I can hardly believe it's 200 to go and 165 done. So much has already changed. And we're not even halfway yet. In a way, I'm completely terrified. I was speaking to a friend today at lunch. Now suddenly I feel incapable of telling you what I told her. Maybe one day. Let's read Plato. It's Protagoras speaking. He just finished telling a myth, and now he's gonna switch to reason, from mythos to logos. No one would instruct, no one would rebuke or be angry with those whose calamities they suppose to be due to nature or chance. They do not try to punish them or to prevent them from being what they are. They do but pity them. Who is so foolish as to chastise and instruct the ugly, or the diminutive, or the feeble? And for this reason, because he knows that good and evil of this kind is the work of nature and of chance. Whereas if a man is wanting in those good qualities, which are attained by study and exercise and teaching, and has only the contrary evil qualities, other men are angry with him and punish and reprove him of these evil qualities. One is impiety, another injustice, and they may be described generally as the very opposite of political virtue. In such cases, any man will be angry with another or reprimand him, clearly because he thinks that by study and learning, the virtue in which the other is deficient may be acquired. If you will think, Socrates, of the nature of punishment, you will see at once that in the opinion of mankind, virtue may be acquired. No one punishes the evildoer under the notion or for the reason that he has done wrong. Only the unreasonable fury of the beast acts in that manner. But he who desires to inflict rational punishment does not retaliate for a past wrong which cannot be undone. He has regard to the future, and is desirous of that the man who is punished, and he who sees him punished, may be deterred from doing wrong again. He punishes for the sake of prevention, thereby clearly implying that virtue is capable of being taught. This is the notion of all who retaliate upon others, either privately or publicly. And the Athenians too, your own citizens, like other men, punish and take vengeance on all whom they regard as evildoers, and hence we may infer them to be of the number of those who think that virtue may be acquired and taught. Thus far, Socrates, I have shown you clearly enough, if I am not mistaken, that your countrymen are right in admitting the tinker and the cobbler to advice about politics, and also that they deem virtue to be capable of being taught and acquired. There yet remains one difficulty which has been raised by you about the sons of good men. What is the reason why good men teach their sons the knowledge which is gained from teachers, and make them wise in that, but do nothing towards improving them in the virtues which distinguish themselves? And here, Socrates, I will leave the myth and resume the argument. Leave the fable and resume the argument. Please to consider, is there or is there not some one quality of which all the citizens must be partakers, if there is to be a city at all? In the answer to this question is contained the only solution of your difficulty. There is no other. For if there be any such quality, and this quality or unity is not the art of the carpenter or the smith or the potter, but justice and temperance and holiness, and in a word, manly virtue, arete. If this is the quality of which all men must be partakers, and which is the very condition of their learning or doing anything else, and if he who is wanting in this, whether he be a child only or a grown-up man or woman, must be taught and punished, until by punishment he becomes better, and he who rebels against instruction and punishment is either exiled or condemned to death under the idea that he is incurable. If what I am saying be true, good men have their sons taught other things and not this. Do consider how extraordinary their conduct would appear to be. For we have shown that they think virtue capable of being taught and cultivated both in private and public, and notwithstanding they have their sons taught lesser matters, ignorance of which does not involve the punishment of death, but greater things, of which the ignorance may cause death and exile to those who have no training or knowledge of them, aye, the confiscation as well as death, and in a word, may be the ruin of families. Those things, I say, they are supposed not to teach them, not to take the utmost care that they should learn. How improbable is this, Socrates? Education and admonition commence in the first years of childhood. I was a bit distracted there by my own thoughts. I saw something of the future. And I don't know, of course. Not a vision, not seeing. It was different. Education and admonition commence in the first year of childhood and last to the very end of life. Mother and nurse and the father and tutor are vying with one another about the improvement of the child as soon as ever he is able to understand what is being said to him. He cannot say or do anything without their settling forth to him that this is just and that is unjust. This is honorable and that is dishonorable. This is holy, that is unholy. Do this and abstain from that, and if he obeys, well and good. If not, he is straitened by threats and blows, like a piece of bent or warped wood. At a later stage, they send him to teachers and enjoin them to see to his manners even more than to his reading and music. And the teachers do as they desired. And when the boy has learned his letters and is beginning to understand what is written, as before he understood only what was spoken, they put into his hands the works of the great poets, which he reads sitting on a bench at school. In these are contained many admonitions. It might not have been the future that I felt, it might have been the present. I don't know. In these are contained many admonitions and many tales and praises and encomia of ancient famous men, which he is required to learn by heart, in order that he may imitate or emulate them and desire to become like them. Then again, the teachers of the guitar take similar care that the young disciple is temperate and get into no mischief. And when they have taught him the use of the guitar, they introduce him to the poems of other excellent poets who are the lyric poets, and these they set to music and make their harmonies and rhythms quite familiar to the children's souls, in order that they may learn to be more gentle and harmonious and rhythmical, and so more fitted for speech and action. For the life of man in every part has need of harmony and rhythm. Then they sent them to the master of gymnastics in order that their bodies may better minister to the virtuous mind, and that they may not be compelled through bodily weakness to play the coward in war or any other occasion. This is what is done by those who have the means, and those who have the means are rich. Their children begin to go to school soonest and leave off latest. When they have done with masters, the state again compels them to learn the laws and live after the pattern which they furnish, and not after their own fancies. And just as in learning to write, the writing master first draws lines with the style for the use of the young beginner, and gives him the tablet and makes him follow the lines, so the city draws the laws, which were the inventions of good lawgivers living in the olden times. These are given to the young man in order to guide him in his conduct, whether he is commanding or obeying, and he who transgresses them is to be corrected, or in other words, called to account, which is a term used not only in your country, but also in many others, seeing that justice calls men to account, or justice correction. Justice is a form of correction. Now, when there is all this care about virtue, private and public, why, Socrates, do you still wonder and doubt whether virtue can be taught? Cease to wonder, for the opposite would be far more surprising. But why then do the sons of good fathers often turn out ill? There is nothing very wonderful in this, for, as I have been saying, the existence of a state implies that virtue is not any man's private possession. If so, and nothing can be truer, then I will further ask you to imagine, as an illustration, some other pursuit or branch of knowledge, which may be assumed equally to be the condition of the existence of the state. Suppose that there could be no state unless we were all flute players, as far as each had the capacity, and everybody was freely teaching everybody the art, both in private and public, and reproving the bad player as freely and openly as every man now teaches justice and the laws, not concealing them as he would conceal the other arts, but imparting them, for all of us have a mutual interest in the justice and virtue of one another. And this is the reason why every one is so ready to teach justice and the laws. Suppose, I say, that there were the same readiness and liberality among us in teaching one another flute playing. Do you imagine, Socrates, that the sons of good flute players would be more likely to be good than the sons of the bad ones? I think not. Would not their sons grow up to be distinguished or undistinguished according to their own natural capacities as flute players? And the son of a good player would often turn out to be a bad one, and the son of a bad player to be a good one. All flute players would be good enough in comparison of those who were ignorant and unacquainted with the art of flute playing. In like manner, I would have you consider that he who appears to you to be the worst of those who have been brought up in law and humanities would appear to be a just man and a master of justice if he were to compare with men who had no education, or courts of justice or laws, or any restraints upon them which compelled them to practice virtue, with the savages, for example, whom the poet exhibited on the stage at the last year's Lanian festival. If you were living among men such as the man-haters in this chorus, you would be only too glad to meet with Eurybates and Phrynidas, and you would sorrowfully long to revisit the rascality of this part of the world. You, Socrates, are discontented, and why? Because all men are teachers of virtue, each one according to his ability. And you say, where are the teachers? You might as well ask, who teaches Greek? For of that too there will not be any teachers found. Or you might ask, who is to teach the sons of our artisans this same art which they have learned of their fathers? He and his fellow workmen have taught them to the best of their ability. But who will carry them further in their arts? And you would certainly have a difficulty, Socrates, in finding a teacher of them. But there would be no difficulty in finding a teacher of those who are wholly ignorant. And this is true of virtue or of anything else. If a man is better able than we are to promote virtue, ever so little, we must be content with the result. A teacher of this sort I believe myself to be, and above all other men to have the knowledge which makes a man noble and good. And I give my pupils their money's worth, and even more, as they themselves confess. And therefore I have introduced the following mode of payment. When a man has been my pupil, if he likes, he pays my price. But there is no compulsion. And if he does not like, he has only to go into a temple and take an oath of the value of the instructions, and he pays no more than he declares to be their value. Such is my fable, Socrates, and such is the argument by which I endeavor to show that virtue may be taught, and that this is the opinion of the Athenians. And I have also attempted to show that you are not to wonder at good fathers having bad sons, or at good sons having bad fathers, of which the sons of Polycletus afford an example, who are the companions of our friends here, Paralus and Xanthippus, but are nothing in comparison with their father. And this is true of the sons of many other artists. As yet I ought not to say the same of Paralus and Xanthippus themselves, for they are young, and there is still hope of them. Protagoras ended, and in my ear so charming left his voice, that I the while thought him still speaking, still stood fixed to hear, which is apparently how Milton phrased this sentence in Paradise Lost. At length, when the truth dawned upon me that he had really finished, not without difficulty I began to collect myself, and looking at Hippocrates, I said to him, O son of Apollodorus, how deeply grateful I am to you for having brought me hither. I would not have missed the speech of Protagoras for a great deal. For I used to imagine that no human care could make men good, but I know better now. Yet I have still one very small difficulty, which I am sure that Protagoras will easily explain, as he has already explained so much. If a man were to go and consult Pericles or any of our great speakers about these matters, he might perhaps hear as fine a discourse. But then when one has a question to ask of any of them, like books, they can neither answer nor ask. And if anyone challenges the least particular of their speech, they go ringing on in a long harangue, like brazen pots, which, when they are struck, continue to sound unless someone puts his hand upon them. Whereas our friend Protagoras can not only make a good speech, as he has already shown, but when he is asked a question, he can answer briefly. And when he asks, he will wait and hear the answer. And this is a very rare gift. Thus far our scripture of the evening. Now I'm not sure if Socrates is trying to woo Protagoras at the ending by complimenting him on something that he is still to do. I'm not sure if that's Socratic irony, but I did write down that Plato uses basically all these arguments in the mouth of the Athenian in the laws. So, and we see it also in the Republic, but more elaborate in the laws. So one could argue at least that Plato is rather sympathetic towards the words he here puts into the mouth of Protagoras. So I'll just briefly touch on the more exoteric things that went through my mind as I was reading. Probably it won't be brief. At first, of course, the book Behave came to mind. I don't have his book on determination. I only have this one. And he absolutely makes a case for reform instead of punishment, for the sake of the future and not for the sake of the past, because people really cannot help even in matters of virtue or the lack thereof. So I wrote down we should actually feel sorry for the impious and the unjust. That is not a very easy thing to do. In fact, we all feel very happy when they could potentially be called to justice. We all desperately want that. And maybe it is because maybe some of us are good enough that the reason why we're happy is because we want to, if not possible to see them reformed, at least see the harm that they do minimized or come to an end even. Can virtue be taught? I would say yes, in the same way that we are dogs that can be conditioned. we are animals that can be conditioned, just like Pavlov's dogs. We are socialized. Of course, there's always exceptions to the rule, but there's reasons always behind the exceptions. What I find interesting then is, how does norms actually change? Because we're all socialized into a specific culture with specific what is good, considered what is good, what is virtuous, what is the right thing to do. But that does change, and it seems to change for the better. Hence the fact that most of us are more ethical than the gods of the Bronze Age, for instance. I wonder how that happens. Maybe it is a type of form of, like, the whole natural, evolution thing. Like, every now and then there's anomalies, things that's a bit different, people who think or feel a little bit different and see a bit different. And oftentimes those people do not survive physically, or their ideas or whatever. But then at the right moment, maybe the environment calls for exactly that. And then they start to thrive. Those ideas start to thrive. I suppose that's the whole meme thing, right? Not quite, I guess, but related to it. I have 2 more things left that I wrote down. I'll tell the story first. So as I was reading about everyone teaching everyone virtues, I had a glimpse of the past. Incidents at Rebecca's with a little baby. I was thinking yesterday I should have maybe said something about that. That I'm not necessarily, well, let's just say I'm more in touch with my evil side than with my good side. 2 incidents, and I think the latter was only possible because of the first. Or maybe not. No, I think the latter was only possible because of my blessing, my initiation. But anyway, so the Friday night, I think, their baby is just adorable. I don't want to speak to him about him too much because it's someone else's child, but he's just adorable. I love him so much. I love all of them so much. And he has the habit of feeding people. So I've never shared food so much with other people than this past weekend, last weekend already, 2 weekends ago. Because he would take food from Rebecca's plate and feed me, or food from my plate and feed her. Things like that. And the Friday night, pizza night, afterwards we were sitting in the living room, and we had chocolates and wine, and he was feeding me chocolates, which I, of course, there's worse ways to treat me than to feed me chocolate. But he also found a crayon, quite a thick crayon, blue crayon. And he tried to feed me the crayon, although I'm quite sure he knows that that cannot be eaten. So what I did is I took the crayon from my mouth and blew the smoke right in his face. And Rebecca was like, "Oh, Auntie Lizelle is naughty." But he giggled a bit, and then he put the crayon back in my mouth. And so I did it again, and he started laughing quite hysterically. Of course, as with all toddlers, we continued playing this game until I found something else to distract him with. But I was very much aware of the fact that I am potentially teaching him a habit, although he's very young, I don't think, that his parents would not appreciate him participating in. If not the smoking, then the blowing of the smoke in people's faces. He thought it was hilarious. And then the next day, an odd thing happened. Well, they thought it was really odd. For me, it's they are vegan, and they ordered. We decided to get takeaways, and Rebecca made a few things, and they got a few takeaway stuff, and just chips basically, and vegan fish, which was really fishy, and I don't really like fish, so. But Paul accidentally, and he's like, "I don't know how that happened. It's never apparently happened before." Ordered pulled pork toppings on the chips with cheese. I know how it happened. I did not do anything, but I was sitting next to him. Strange things happen when I'm around. And I don't know if it was, I think it was needed for some symbolic reasons. And it's a pity that it was pork, because I try to avoid eating pig, because they are the worst treated. It's really difficult. In the Netherlands, you have like a star rates. So there's up to 3 stars how the animals are treated. And it's really difficult to find any pig products that has 3 stars. So I doubt that this was well-treated animals. Of course, they were quite unhappy seeing that, and I wasn't happy, but I said, well, I can eat it. Like, I'm not a vegan. I'm not a vegetarian. And Rebecca was happy. She's like, "Oh yeah, at least we don't have to throw it away, because that would be even worse." I don't know how Paul felt. He did not even want to eat the chips underneath. Because luckily it was all on top, so Rebecca could eat the others. And so I had all the meat in my plate. And of course, and Rebecca did say on a previous occasion, and she repeated it afterwards. I don't know if... Or did she repeat it afterwards? I'm not sure. That she doesn't want to be the kind of mom, like at a party, that grabs food from a kid's hand if he happens to take something that's non-vegan. But it was in their own home. And honestly, I didn't think, I just acted on instinct. So when he came to my plate, because he has a habit to take food from everyone's plate as well, which is lovely and such fun. It's really like a lot of fun to eat like that. I feel like that's how everybody should eat. I put my hand in front of my plate and said no with a level of authority that I seldom display. But every time I do, I get quite a reaction. And he as well, because you know how kids are. And every other time when he was told no, it was like he, start crying and like being unhappy and trying to get their way anyway. But he didn't. He was completely quiet and just stood there looking at me. And then I took some peas. What is that smashed peas thingy-majingy that the Brits have? And offered that to him instead. And he just continued with that, happy. And the next day, something odd happened also that showed that he had reverence for that, I think is the way to say it. And then I heard myself say, as I was blocking the food from him and eating it myself as quickly as possible because I felt bad, that Auntie Lizelle will eat it because Auntie Lizelle is evil. She can eat flesh. And I think that's potentially symbolically significant. That we teach not only virtue, but also, not only the good, but also the evil. But the knowledge of it being evil with it. And I'm really not suggesting people do evil things so that others can learn from that. I don't know what I am suggesting. Today I'm doing quite mind-numbing work because I'm wrapping stuff up at work. So I was listening to Alex and Bernardo Kastrup. Awesome. Like, I think I'm just gonna go deeper down that rabbit hole. And then I listened to that song on that human music, like, methinks the lady doth protest too much, calling it human. Channel, the one on Spinoza. And I felt such compassion for the all, for the one, for mind. Supposing it was just trying to know itself, and now it's got all these what's the word? Or multiple personalities. I know the word. I even knew it before they said it, but now it's gone. Suppose it was solitude that made it ripple us into being. I was also today at a certain point around the same time, I think. Well, no, while I was listening to Alex and Bernardo, missing a woman, but I don't know who. I texted my mom and I went through all the women that I could possibly be thinking of. But they all didn't seem quite to fit the bill. So if you're a woman and you needed someone to take note of you today, then I might have heard you. I might have felt you. So you are not alone. We're all connected. We're all one. There's also very deep, well, there is a symbolic hidden tale here. And I'll end with that. First, one must understand spoken language. Then one must learn written language. Then, when the time comes, you can sit down and read the great poets. And if you are called to do so, if you are strong enough, you can memorize, learn by heart these great poets. And then, for those capable of carrying the fire, carrying it so well in some cases, you must learn to imitate them. Sophia herself will guide your way.